for example, when holding presentations, when writing essays, when preparing yourself for IELTS, TOEFL, or any proficiency exam. Guys, there are better phrases, more advanced English phrases you could use instead of always saying for example. In this video lesson, you will learn over 15 advanced English phrases, better phrases to use instead of saying for example, to effectively communicate your ideas and to speak more confidently in English. Now, if this is the first time you're here on my YouTube channel, welcome. My name's Adriana from EnglishTeacherAdriana.com. I help English learners improve their English, boost their confidence to finally speak English confidently. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn on notifications so that you know you get that bell when I post my next video lesson here to help you improve your English. Guys, in this video lesson, there'll be many new phrases, many examples. While you're watching this video lesson, I suggest that you use and apply the shadowing technique. While you hear these phrases, while you hear the examples, say them out loud with me to help you remember and use these phrases when speaking in English. Go and find yourself a quiet corner and let's begin. Now, the first phrase you could use instead of for example is for instance. For instance. Guys, for instance and for example, you can use them interchangeably. Whenever you want to use for example, you can use for instance, provided that you are using it in the right context. For example, in the sentence, our new car model has many features you will love. For instance, it can wash itself. So here you could directly replace for instance with for example. Some of the other examples we're going through in this video lesson, you can't do that. But here in this sentence, you can replace for instance with for example. They're interchangeable. Careful pronunciation, for instance. For instance. Now, if you're writing an essay or holding a presentation and you want to be really specific, so you want to highlight information, you could say for example, but this is a little bit weak in this example. It'd be better to use the word namely. Namely. For example, the new train line connects cities within Australia, namely Melbourne and Sydney. So notice how we use namely here for more detail, more information, and to be specific. This is a great word to be using in written form when you want to be really specific, even in conversational settings. But if you're always saying, for example, to add more details in your essays, try to spice it up a little bit more by using namely, especially for adding more detail. Careful pronunciation. Namely. Namely. Now, if you're holding a presentation, writing emails, informal emails, and you'd like to introduce ideas, but specific ideas based on your points in that presentation, in that email, in that writing piece, then a great phrase to be using in this setting is to give you an idea. To give you an idea. For example, to give you an idea, Bob followed the diet, he lost a lot of weight and is feeling a lot more confident today. So here, notice how to give you an idea, we're introducing a concrete example based on the previous sentence before. This is great to be using in presentations, in meetings, in IELTS exam, when you would like to give more detail and provide a concrete example. Careful pronunciation, to give you an idea. To give you an idea. Now, another great phrase you could use after you've stated a fact, but you need to back up your fact. Instead of saying, for example, you could use a phrase as proof. As proof. For example, drinking an excess of alcohol every single day can have a negative impact on your health. As proof, research conducted by the University of Melbourne shows that those who consume alcohol on a daily basis, they are more likely to suffer from cancer. So notice at the beginning how we're stating a fact, and in a lot of essays when you're holding presentations, a lot of times you need to back them up with examples, maybe even statistics, anecdotes, and if you're doing this, the phrase as proof is great to be using in this setting. Careful pronunciation, as proof. As proof. Now, if you're holding a presentation or you're in a meeting and you would like to grab the listener's attention, you want to make the story, what you're talking about them. You want to make them the star of the story. You can do this and also give examples using the phrase suppose that. Let's analyze how you can do this in this example. Many people today waste time watching TV. Suppose that they spend all their time watching TV instead of doing more productive tasks such as cleaning, exercising, or gardening. So here I could have used for example, but by using suppose that, I'm drawing your attention in. I'm making you imagine, think about that situation, but also providing concrete examples. This is a great phrase to be using in presentations, in meetings, to engage the listener's attention and to keep them more captivated in what you're trying to say and your message. Careful pronunciation, suppose that. Suppose that. But if you'd like to be more concrete and more direct and prove your point, a great phrase to be using is the phrase to illustrate. To illustrate. For example, all companies need a good, solid marketing strategy. To illustrate, let's have a look at Apple, what they've been doing over the last 3 months and what they've been able to achieve with a good, solid marketing strategy. This phrase is especially great to be using in presentations if you are analyzing a lot of data, a lot of number. To illustrate really just cuts to the chase, grabs the reader's attention by processing information. Great to be using in reports if you're analyzing reports in verbal form. Careful pronunciation, to illustrate. To illustrate. Also in presentations or even in your IELTS exam, when you would like to really engage a listener and make them believe you and your examples, a great way to captivate them, put them in that situation, is by using the word imagine. Imagine. For example, imagine a world without carbon emissions. We'd be able to breathe fresh air, we'd all be healthier, and possibly there'd be a decline in diseases. So here you could use for example, but by adding the word imagine, you are engaging the listener more, you're being more creative, and you're still giving concrete examples. Please note guys, this is great to be using in creative settings, but if you're giving reports, information, I wouldn't suggest that you use the word imagine. You'd want to use words such as to illustrate and, for instance, to be a little bit more direct. But imagine is great to be using when you'd like to convince somebody of something and also provide examples at the same time. Careful pronunciation, imagine. Imagine. Now, a very similar phrase to imagine is also the phrase pretend that. Pretend that. For example, pretend that we lived in a world without carbon emissions. We all recycled our water. We all looked after our planet. What would our world look like? So here, guys, you are again stimulating the listener to think, imagine, but also provide concrete examples. Again, this is not good to be using in presentations when the listener is not wanting to imagine, be creative, but it is really good to be using when you are trying to convince them of something and also giving them examples. So for example, in IELTS, if you're having a debate, this is great. If you're proposing new ideas, so maybe a strategy, a new plan to your boss, this is okay, but not in reports and when you're conveying data. Careful pronunciation, pretend that. Pretend that. But a really informal phrase you could use, this is great to be using friends, family, people that you know really well, is a phrase, let's say. Let's say. For example, let's say we all lived in a world without carbon emissions. We all recycled our waste. What would our world be like? So this is really great to be using with friends, family, in conversational settings with people that you know really well, even in the lunchroom with colleagues. Not the best to be using in really formal settings. So case maybe at times in IELTS, but there are more advanced phrases you could use throughout this video lesson. But this is used very often in everyday conversations because it's just so formal to say, for example, with your friends. Let's say is a lot more natural. Careful pronunciation, let's say. Let's say. But in those times that you need to be really specific, so you need to provide information, maybe some testimonials, some blog posts, some reports, some data in a meeting, in a presentation, in a writing piece, then a great phrase to be using in this setting is a phrase to show you what I mean. To show you what I mean. Now this is very similar to the phrase to illustrate, so you can interchange these ones at times. Be careful of course with grammar, your sentence structure, but for example the sentence, employees today are working longer hours and being paid less. To show you what I mean, let's go through the data presented on the screen where this is clearly shown. So here, notice at the beginning we stated a fact and then I backed it up, so providing the example of the data shown on the screen. Careful pronunciation, to show you what I mean. To show you what I mean. Now a shorter phrase you could use to express this is a phrase as seen in. As seen in. For example, employees today are working longer hours and are being paid less. As seen in the analysis done by the government, we can see the trends happening over the last 10 years. So here again, we're stating a fact at the beginning and providing an example. So the report conducted by the government. And we're linking them together instead of saying, for example, as seen in the report. Careful pronunciation, as seen in. as seen in. Now, if you're writing a piece or you're holding a presentation and you've made a really bold claim, so you've claimed something and you stand by it 100%, but you have the perfect example behind your claim, then a great phrase to be using in this case is a phrase case in point. Case in point. For example, it might sound unbelievable, but if you reduce your employees' working hours, they will be more productive. Case in point, we reduced employees' working hours and productivity increased by 15%. So here you can see in the beginning, there was a suggestion that I made, but here I backed it up with a really strong claim. So here, I'm not wrong. It happened. It's evidence. It's the example. So if you'd like to be really concrete with the examples, you know that they work. Case in point is a great phrase to be using. Careful pronunciation, case in point. Case in point. Now, if you need to illustrate a certain point even further with concrete examples, then you could use a phrase such as. For example, our local farmers market offers a lot of produce to our community, such as apples, pears, lettuce, and cucumbers. So here, instead of saying for example, such as is a great phrase to be using here to at least provide examples and to add particular information to your point. Careful pronunciation, such as. Now, if there's a certain section of your message that you'd like to emphasize, the phrase in particular is a great phrase to be using to do this. For example, with a solid marketing strategy, your company will reap in many benefits. In particular, sales revenue will definitely increase. So here, in particular, we want to highlight what's going to happen, their example. So here, in particular, is emphasizing the idea that sales revenue will increase. This is a great phrase to be using in work settings, in essays, great when you want to highlight something in a really formal way. Careful pronunciation, in particular. Now, of course, I'm sure you've seen this one before. You could use the 2 letters and 2 full stops, e.g. Now, this is self-explanatory. If you're lazy or if you just want to use e.g., I use this all the time, just e.g., to simply say, for example, but in a really short way. For example, there are many flowers you could plant out in your garden, e.g. daffodils, hydrangeas, and roses. Remember guys, that practice makes perfect. Make sure to watch this video lesson a few times. Use and apply the shadowing technique. Repeat, say these new phrases, say these examples out loud to help you remember and use them when speaking in English. Let's take it one step further now by completing a homework task together. Watch this video lesson for a 3rd time. Choose 5 new phrases and use them in a sentence in the comments below this video. Remember guys, if you like this video lesson, please do let me know by smashing that like button. Like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Turn on notifications so that you know you get that bell when I post my next video lesson here to help you improve your English. Continue learning with me by downloading my free audio guide where I share with you exactly what you need to be doing every single day to drastically improve your confidence speaking in English. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in my next lesson. Bye for now.